So what is mixing at its core? You want someone to listen to what you've done, put on headphones, and start nodding their head. Your mix is supporting the production, which is supporting the song, which is supporting the artist. That's part of the vision of the thing. If you can kind of keep these things in your head, you're gonna be way ahead of the game before you even twist a knob. My name's Scott Jacoby. I'm a writer, producer, and mixer from New York City, and we're here at my studio, Usonia Studios in downtown Manhattan. And today we're gonna be talking about having a vision for a mix, and we're gonna do that in the context of a series of videos exploring the various aspects of having a vision for a mix. So what's it mean to have a vision? I don't know about you, but when I open a session that I've never seen before, there's a whole lot of information there and a whole lot of choices that you can make. A whole bunch of tracks, a whole bunch of faders, a whole bunch of knobs. So how do you decide about your choices? What do you do? Where do you start? For me, having a vision for your mix is the key thing. The vision informs the choices. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Hope you like it. Let's get started. One way that people might start a mix is to open up the session, start twisting knobs, and start moving faders around, and that could work great. I approach it a little bit differently, and that's where the vision comes in. I like to have an overall vision for the mix. Does it sound big? Does it sound intimate? Is it tight? Is it open? Is it hard? Is it soft? All of these different decisions, those inform the mix. For me, mixing is using technical devices and technique to make someone feel something. At the end of the day, that's what this whole thing is about. You want someone to listen to what you've done, put on headphones, and start nodding their head. That's what the payoff is. That's what the art of this is. How do you achieve that? Well, it actually reminds me of that old story for kids where there was an old lady who swallowed a fly. You've got your artist at the top of a triangle, and then you've got a song that is supporting that artist. And then you've got a production that's supporting that song. And underneath the production, you've got a mix which is supporting that production. These things, it's not in a vacuum. Your mix is supporting the production, which is supporting the song, which is supporting the artist. That's part of the vision of the thing. Before you do anything, before you twist a knob, before you lift a fader, you have a sense of what this is going to sound like. You have a sense of what the mix is going to make you feel like. When you mix a song, there's only two scenarios. Either you're the producer of that song and then you're mixing it, or someone else is a producer and you're mixing it. In this particular instance, I was a producer of the song, and so I've heard it thousands of times. I still made a rough mix at the very end of the comping process and said, this is my rough mix, I'm going to listen to it. And that's where I came up with the vision. So I'm listening to the rough mix of the song and saying, how do I want this to go? So let's take a listen to this song and talk about the different directions that I could have taken in mixing it. First thing I want to point out though, this artist, her name is LILA DUPONT, and she's a 19-year-old phenomenal singer-songwriter who's signed to my label, Usonia Records. We're going to listen to the second verse of the song, and this is the rough mix.
I don't know what to say anymore. 'Cause you know that I've tried, but I just can't keep on fighting.
So when I heard the rough mix of that song, even though I've heard it 1,000 times before, my thinking was, how do I want this to sound? How do I envision this? And I had a pretty clear vision of the song. I wanted it to sound like it was on a cloud, or a big pillow, and everything was soft and everything was intimate, although huge. I wanted it to sound like a slow-moving Pink Floyd song that just digs in, it gets big, but it never loses its softness. So that was the approach. Now, that's not necessarily the right approach, it's just the approach that I felt was right. I could have taken a totally different approach to it and approached it like a Norah Jones song, for example, where it's acoustic guitar driven and very intimate and not as big a use of space. But I chose what I did. So now that you have a vision for the mix, the next step is really taking that vision and putting it into a process that you can apply practically. What I mean by that is that you have a concept. It's nice to have a concept, but now what do I actually do? What do I twist? What do I do on the faders? And how do we get there to have an amazing sounding piece of music? Well, one important thing to realize is that even though it may have taken you only a couple minutes to kind of come up with the vision, you've done so much of the heavy lifting, because that's always the thing that you'll go back to at all the rest of the process. The rest of the process might be 8 hours of toiling with EQs and compressors and kind of getting this whole thing to work and to glue together. But the core of it, the whole design of it, comes from that initial seed of creativity. So let's talk about the various choices that are to be made and the practical application of this vision. I break it down into 3 things. You've got balance, tone, and space. Balance is pretty simple. It's the relative volumes of each of the elements in the song, getting levels on something. Tone is the shaping of each of those elements, either by compression or EQ or modulation or any other type of effect. And then space is simply placing it in space. Are we going left, right, front, back with any particular sound? Between those 3 things, all of the choices reside there. And that's what you do to shape your vision. So now we're going to take a listen to the final mix of this song, where we incorporated those 3 elements of balance, tone, and space to achieve a mixed vision. So when you hear that, you might think it's obvious, like, oh, duh, go in that big, spacious, pillowy direction. But it's not. That came from the vision, and heard the thing and envisioned in a certain way, and then you execute with those 3 things. So we're going to take a look at more depth on those 3 elements of balance, tone, and space. And now I want to take a deeper look at balance and see how the art of balancing a track really affects your overall mix. So in this particular song, we had decided early on that the drums were going to have a supporting role rather than a prominent role as it is in most pop songs. So we wanted the drums to just sort of sit there and be a constant and be a bed, but never be very impactful. We just wanted the bigness, but for that to be sort of further down in the mix. So that was one of the big choices that we made in balance. And we wanted the lead vocal to sit on top of everything. So that was another big choice. Let's take a look at some technical decisions that helped execute that vision. If we look at the drums, I'm going to just play a section of drums when they first come in. Even though you're hearing them soloed and you're not getting the levels of anything else, you can hear how we sculpted that approach of having them be in there, but just buried a little bit and not super attacky. And one thing that was helpful in doing that was to use a compressor. In this case, I used the JJP Pukechild compressor, which is acting fairly minimally. You can just take a look here. But as the song grows to the bigger sections, it takes on more of a washy feel. And it really helps those ride cymbals sustain and have that big openness. The other thing that we did here was on an SSL hardware compressor, we did some compression that did this. And whether you're using the plug-in version of the SSL compressor or the hardware version, that's not the point. The point is that that compressor and the settings helped us achieve a certain thing. In this particular case, it was a very quick attack time and a fairly quick release time, which in effect absorbs all the energy from the kick and snare transients and allows the other things to breathe. And that was part of putting the drums in a particular landscape and allowing them to sort of sit underneath the mix, but still have a central role. Let's take a look at the lead vocal and see how similar techniques gave us a sense of balance there. I'm gonna solo the lead vocal in this verse section.
I don't know what to do anymore.
One of the things that I love about LILA's singing is that she has such a distinct way of ending notes in terms of her vibrato and her breath at the end of each phrase. And so I wanted to accentuate that the best I could, and I used compressors to do that. In this case, CLA is acting minimally.
I don't know what to do anymore.
And then we also have Vocal Rider doing a similar thing at the end of the chain of plugins, which is actually the most important thing, because after it's doing its initial compression, you're coming back and it's really doing those rides, which I used to have to write in or fade in, and now it's doing that automatically, which is very helpful, and you're getting all of the subtlety at the end of the phrases.
I don't know what to do anymore.
And just to show you what that's like in comparison, let me take off both the CLA and Vocal Rider and play the same thing.
I don't know what to do anymore.
And back one more time.
I don't know what to do anymore.
So it really brings the whole thing present and makes the whole thing even, which gets back to this idea of balance. When we have that balanced and the subtlety balanced with everything else in the arrangement, it really sets us up for a great mix. So we're gonna take a look at each of those things which shaped the whole vision: balance, tone, and space in this series of 3 videos. And we'll see you again soon.